What's up, guys? Welcome back to Tribe Talk. I'm here with my good friend and partner, the Michael Sanders. Say hi, Mike.
Hello, guys. How's it going?
Not too bad, buddy. How are you today?
I am doing well.
Excited to be staring into your beautiful
eyes. That's right. Yeah,
exactly right.
That's me.
It's not weird.
Not at all.
Yeah, don't sweat it.
No.
So we're here to talk about what's going on with our groups lately. It's kind of a weird topic, Mike, but for lack of a better term, what frustrates us about men in the world today? How are groups going? Let me ask you that.
Yeah. So I think they're going pretty good. Actually, I would say the group I have with my high school boys has been absolutely amazing. They are committed. It's such a positive thing for me to see how God is moving in their lives and how hungry they are.
Yeah.
And by the way, I pray for them all the time that they'll continue to keep that hunger in their hearts for the rest of their lives to understand Jesus at a deeper level. So that's always really important. And then, my other groups are going okay. The issue is, these guys are adults and they got a billion things going on.
Yep, true.
And so people get pulled out quite a bit. And so anyway, we're kind of going through some of that right now. But overall, I feel pretty good about things.
Yeah, I would agree. My groups are strong. The guys are hungry for the word. They really do want to do what's right for the kingdom, which I'm pretty pumped about. I guess when I say that I'm super frustrated, I feel like, and you tell me what you think, the world is trying to convince men to be timid.
Yes.
Yeah, big time. And so the result is we get caught up in all that garbage. We actually listen to the devil's lies, and it makes us very meek, mild, ineffective.
Yep.
And so I kind of want to talk today about what it looks like to be bold. Mm-hmm. And if you attend one of our groups, it's pretty important that you understand that we're not in this just to receive the word and sit in our misery, in our droll lives, and never be aggressive. Mm-hmm. And I think we should be taking the next step. What do you think?
No, I totally agree. One of the things I think that has been going on way, way, way too long is we have a tendency, I believe, to make our faith about ourselves. And in other words, what I mean by that is obviously there has to be a relationship between you and Jesus. You have to accept him for who he is and give your life to him. But that's just the beginning. And that's obviously an incredibly important thing for us to do, is to give our hearts to him. But at the end of the day, that's actually just the beginning of something much bigger. And what that something is that we are actually being called to do something with our faith.
Yeah, it's the first step.
That's right. That's the first step.
Yeah, exactly right.
And that means the second step then, which I think is as important as the first, I don't know if I go, it's very important that what we do with our faith. And what I see so many times is I said yes to Jesus. He's my God. And then we just kind of let it die off. And so what ends up happening, we go to church on Sundays, we do the thing, but we're not really actually living what we've been called to do. And what we've been called to do is, again, what you and I, which our ministry is all built on, is the Great Commission and the cultural mandate to actually make the world a better place, to bring heaven to earth. In other words, as soon as you say yes to him, you actually have work to do.
That's when it begins 100%. And it's not easy work either.
No, it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, but and maybe we're doing it to ourselves, right? You think about video games and the way that we're parenting these days, and we're plugging kids in. When I was a kid, if the sun was up, I wasn't allowed in the house.
Yeah, that's right.
And we went out and we were adventurous.
Yep.
We took chances, we took risks, and they were little risks, but in our world at the time, they seemed like big risks. Yeah. And so, maybe we've softened ourselves to the point where we don't want to take chances.
We have softened ourselves. And I think what you see in this country is, from the things we see going on in government and all the things are starting to come forward, we've just allowed ourselves to get comfortable and almost want somebody else to just take care of us.
Exactly right. And you see it in our churches too.
Yes.
You see people walk through the doors. They do tithe. Like I think people are tithing, so that's cool, and that's a righteous thing. It's biblical, and you should do it. But I think we've gotten into this consumer generation where we feel like if I write my check, then you just fill me.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly. Yes. So it's we go to church a lot of times to find I need to be entertained. I need to. Right. It's like I need this amazing spiritual experience, and I don't even know exactly what that is exactly, but I'll show up for it, and I get my spiritual shot in the arm, and then I take off.
And I could tell people I went to church.
And that's not what this is all about.
Agreed.
And if you look at the disciples, for example, and we're going to start talking more about this apostolic calling on our lives in this ministry. The disciples went out and they did really, really hard work.
Oh yeah.
Paul was in jail. Paul, you look at Peter, you look at all of them, and they gave their lives. They gave their lives for something.
Not figuratively.
No, that's right. They gave their lives for something that we still have today.
Right.
And I just think about that all the time. And I actually even pray, maybe this will sound, a little off to people, but I do pray. And it's like, God, give me the strength to stand for you no matter what the cost. Yeah. And that is scary. And I hope I never find out what that looks like.
Well, the crazy thing too is Jesus told them it was going to happen, and they still followed. And today, like guys, we have no excuse. God is not calling you to go do that.
That's right.
Like Jesus isn't here telling people that you're going to go be crucified, for me to deliver my message.
That's right.
So how we define hard is very different than it was back then, and those guys still did it.
Yeah.
So what's our excuse?
Comfort. I honestly, I don't know if that seems to me that so many of us are just looking for comfort. And I think a lot of times people, I think when I look, here's the thing. I was the same way. I did the same thing. It was like, if I could just get to this place where if I got Jesus in my heart somehow, oh gosh,
everything's good.
Everything's going to be good. And that's just not what life is. It's not the way it works. And so, the Bible even tells us that, look, you're going to go through some things. Everybody goes through things, whether you're a Muslim, you're a Christian, you're an atheist, if that's actually a thing, all these different ideas of how to live. We all go through some tough times. The question is why?
Why do we go through the tough times?
Yeah. Why do we go through the tough times?
Well, I've got my thoughts, but what are yours?
So, first of all, that's the world we live in. Right.
That's the free will discussion.
That's right. We still have free will. We still have, an enemy that does not like or want us to understand who we truly are, our identity and our purpose, things we talk about all the time in this ministry. And so with that being said, then that I believe that, there's even a fight or an attack on those that have taken Jesus into their heart, where they're like, I want to be comfortable over here. I just want to be comfortable and not get out and, share how I actually believe.
It's not just that too. We've lost the handle on doing things to connect with our Creator.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
That's not enough for us anymore. It's transactional. It's more like, what can you do for me? I will perform if I get something out of it. And what we don't realize is the hardships should draw you closer to Him. That's because right. You have to depend on Him. Jesus even demonstrated that when He went into the wilderness and He fasted for 40 days and He was tempted by the devil.
Yep.
If you look at His responses to the way the devil tried to tempt Him, He always pointed it back to God, His Father. And even though He was equally God, that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
But we've lost the handle on that being enough.
That's right.
So when you think about works, when you think about suffering, those are all opportunities to get pointed back to relation with your Creator.
That's right.
And specifically trials, that's an opportunity to show God's glory.
Mm-hmm.
and that's just not enough for us anymore.
You're right. And that's scary.
It is kind of scary. But I mean, so the cool thing is we get to flip the script, guys. Like this isn't just Mike and Jim talking about what frustrates us and then we're going to hang up the mic and go away and not do anything about it. We get to make a different choice. Mm-hmm. And that is the power of free will.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So, first steps. What are first steps in order to start making that choice?
Yeah. So first of all, I think that we have to. Everybody has to stop for a minute and actually think about something that maybe we don't, in our quiet time, really wrap our head around. But the reality is, everyone has a world view.
Yes.
They view the world a certain way. And that then leads to this idea of, okay, I have these ways in which I view the world, and they give me ideas. I have to think and I have to understand. And then when I think and I understand based off my worldview, I then come up with words and ways to express how I feel about certain things. And so, in other words, if I understand what love truly is, I say, okay, that's love, and this is what it means, and I explain it to another person.
Yeah.
And so in other words, the point is that everybody has a worldview, and that we need to understand and embrace that idea, and then we need to express our worldview, because we all do anyway.
Right.
But what's interesting is in me growing up. So I'm 54 years old now. I grew up in a very conservative small farm town in Nebraska, in the middle of nowhere, literally in the middle of nowhere, and I went to a parochial school, which is to say, I went to a Lutheran school my whole life, and so I developed this worldview. But I also learned during that time that Christians should just be quiet. Don't
upset the apple cart.
Don't upset the apple cart. And now we are actually seeing where, in my opinion, where we see in our communities all over the place where guys and girls have not upset the apple cart, but other people are upsetting their apple carts based on their worldview like crazy. And we've allowed it to go away. My question then would be, if we continue to allow that to happen, where will this book, the Word of our God, be in, say, 100, 200 years? If we're not
with no one to defend it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So again, this goes back to your worldview.
Yeah. So I think the problem is the enemy leans in to the concept of turning the other cheek. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's you and me convincing each other that we just got to get smacked around all the time. But the devil, the world, tells you, oh, you're a Christian. I thought you were just supposed to turn the other cheek.
Right.
And so we're browbeaten into not defending ourselves.
That's right.
And I mean, how silly is that?
It's crazy.
Now, I think when you look at the biblical view too of how you approach violence upon you, I really think the foundation of that verse isn't that we're just supposed to walk around letting people hit you. It's when we respond, we do so from love.
That's right.
You can be the wolf, like we talk about between the wolf, the sheepdog, and the sheep. You can be the wolf as a Christian, where you're just constantly picking fights and using violence or aggression to get your point across, or you can use a more tempered response. But you have to respond. Like, that's silence right. is not the answer.
That's right.
And I think that's what the devil's done. He's convinced us that we have to be quiet, and that's just not true.
Absolutely not. Yeah. And like I think about my kids all the time in this scenario. Is like, if my kid is struggling with something, and I know it's not good for them, and I know it's harming them, the last thing I do is I stay quiet about it.
Yeah, true.
Now I got it. There's times when, and I think about my kids when they were tiny, super tiny, they're learning how to walk. Yeah. So you watch them, and there's this moment where you're sitting back and you're watching them. You're like, oh gosh, they're climbing that thing.
They're definitely gonna fall.
They're gonna fall, and then you think, okay, if they do fall, which isn't necessarily bad, how bad is it gonna be? In other words, are they really going to get hurt? And then you start playing this game of like, okay, do I let them do it? Do I not let them do it? Because at some point, they'll learn if they fall and go, that didn't work out very well.
Yeah, it's you're measuring probability of something happening versus severity if it does.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you have to make these decisions. But what somehow in this, I feel like in the last however many years, we've gotten to this point where we're just like, well, I'll just be here and just be quiet because that's how I love. But I would never do that with my kids.
Well, the other piece too, like in my daily walk, so I mentioned probability versus severity. As you measure the consequences of speaking up and defending yourself, you immediately go to nuclear option. You go to nuclear result. Mm-hmm. You're like, if I speak up, then it's going to ruin everything. My life will be over. I'll be outcast. People won't accept me. And we care more about upsetting those who don't believe, upsetting the devil's side, than we do about a relationship with our Father.
Yeah, that's it.
We don't even consider the fact that God's going to be disappointed in you.
That's right.
If you don't do the right thing.
He'll still love me.
Right. But
disappointment, because disappointment means that you're not doing what you were called. Let me say that again.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're not doing what you were created to do.
Right. Yeah. So you care more about the reaction of the offender than you do the reaction of your Creator.
That's right.
Yeah.
So here recently, as you know, because you and I know each other pretty well.
At this point, a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. So I get up early in the morning, and I first thing I try to do every day, and I almost always have time because I make sure that I do it, is to get up and pray. And here recently, I started really kind of looking at my own heart, and during prayer time, and God was working on me. He still is in this very thing, and I think it's exactly what we're talking about right now. Is this idea, the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, says fear God, right?
Yep.
But it doesn't say fear man.
True.
Right. So I got thinking about that. I'm like, man, how many things in my life do I do where I'm doing them or not doing them out of the fear of man?
For me, it's a high percentage.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm so frustrated right now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So you look at Proverbs. So as I was praying, I opened up my phone and we're at fear of man Bible passages. And so in Proverbs 29:25, it says, fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe.
Yeah.
Now, this idea of safe is something I think we need to think about as well. So if I say that if I have a fear of man, it will be a snare, which means, okay, cool, I'm just going to sit over here. I'm just going to use this as an example. I'm going to sit over here. That guy's doing something that, is incorrect or whatever it is. I'm just going to sit over here and be quiet. And God's word tells us that's a snare. And then it says, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's think about that for a second. Is that the same thing that we could say about Paul and Peter?
Yeah.
Right?
They definitely were a little bit more aggressive in their approach.
They were, and they lost their lives for what they believed.
Yep.
So
okay, man, and this just popped into my head. I'm so glad you brought this up, because often what stops me is I think in my own little brain, if I speak up, if I do the right thing, then it's going to turn off the person that I'm interacting with, and then they won't be saved because I'm being too aggressive.
It's good.
Well, what happened as a result of Paul and Peter's boldness?
Yeah, we're still talking about it.
2,000 some years later.
That's exactly right.
Christianity is still going strong. So
That's right.
Not only did they not turn people off, and they were being offensive to the people of the day, but they started a revolution of truth.
That's right.
That's lasted this long.
That keeps going on.
That keeps going. And we get so focused on the destination. Like, there's certain steps for me to take in order to achieve a goal. Mm-hmm. When God's just going, no. I'll take care of all those. You just take the first step.
That's exactly right. So this goes back to the quote that you and I that was shared with me that I've shared with you from a good doctor friend of mine who told me one day, he said, Mike, where in the Bible does it say that you're supposed to save my lambs? And I said, it doesn't say that. He goes, exactly, what's it say?
Yeah.
And I said, it says, feed my lambs.
Yeah.
So this is the idea of that. And I want to get back to the safety piece.
Yeah. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, it's great. It's great. So, but what I want to say is that to your point, is that at the end of the day, it's not your job. It's not your job. And it's not my job. It's not pastor or whoever. It's not their job to save anyone. But their job is to feed the people. And how do you feed the people? You understand your own worldview.
Yeah.
You share your worldview. This is how I view the world around me. This is what the things I see. That leads to the language that you're just sharing with individuals and having conversation. And if they get mad at you, well, that's fine, because I've had plenty of people share their worldviews with me, and it makes me mad.
It's also not fair for me to own their reaction. Like their
Exactly.
reaction is my responsibility.
That's exactly right.
It's not. My responsibility is to speak truth.
That's right. Now, my question for you is,
Okay.
how many times have you shared your heart on your belief system, on your worldview, shared that with somebody and thought, man, I'm getting absolutely nowhere here?
Well, I'm not going to say many times. I think, honestly, more times than not, I've just not shared.
Right. Well, same here. Yeah.
But the times I did, it didn't take. It didn't result the way I wanted it to.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
However, there have been other times too when you thought you were getting nowhere with anyone, and then you find out later on that they have accepted and they've moved forward.
Yeah, true.
In their faith. And so again, those are moments that it's out of my control.
Yeah.
But what is in my control is my worldview and how I see it, and not to be scared to share it with other people, because as I said before, everybody shares their worldview, whether they're not doing it or not.
Exactly right.
So
yeah. I think your approach too matters, right? So I've been doing a little research into this. I'm sorry, were you done with your thought?
Well, it'll come back. So
sure?
This idea is safe. Let me just say this.
Good. You finish, and then I'm going to kind of tell you what I've found too. Go ahead.
Okay. So, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. And we talked about Peter and Paul and and all the disciples other than John, giving their lives for something that they believed. So, well, that wasn't very safe. But that's the issue, is we have a tendency to look at this from only this life that we have going on right now.
We just had a moment.
We did.
Yeah, I was going to step in and go, well, eternity.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, if we care about eternity, then dying for that cause was very safe.
Very safe, right? And so there needs to be a shift in us where this idea of safety is not about what I'm getting here today. And if I could tell the story, I think I've already told it once in this podcast, but I'm going to do it again for those that didn't hear it. And sometimes it's good to hear things a couple times. I was just reading a book called Live Not by Lies, and I cannot think. Dreher was his name. Wow, Rod Dreher. That's amazing. I actually remembered the
You got that.
author's
Good job.
name.
Yeah, you passed the test.
Yeah, wow, this is great. We can stop now. Anyway, and he tells a story, and he's talking about this idea of totalitarianism and how sneaky and I think we've obviously seen that quite a bit, where it makes us feel, and a lot of times it makes us fall asleep, is really what it's about. Is like, well, this leader has it all figured out. And we start kind of leaning on the leader as opposed to something much bigger than that, which is identity, purpose, and these different things. And so he was telling a story, and I cannot remember what it was in. I believe it was in Russia years and years ago. And there was, let me say this. I'm not sure exactly where it was at. I can't remember off the top of my head. But what they did was they were trying to keep the Christian faith from moving forward.
Okay.
So what they did was they took pastors and priests and whatnot, and they put them in these work camps. And they would take them out and during the morning, and they would make them push a sled all day. Just push the sled for no reason.
No purpose whatsoever.
Yep. So these idiot men would take these other poor dudes and somehow get satisfaction out of making them push these sleds all day. no reason, just to exhaust them. And then at the end of the day, they would take him by this body of water. They'd line him up, and the guy in charge would have an empty revolver in his hands, and he would say, renounce your faith, walk away from Jesus right now. And then as he was doing this, he would take a shell and put it into the one bullet into his gun, and to make a big production out of this. And
very dramatic.
Very dramatic, to make a point, to make them think about what's actually about to happen. Then he would take the pistol and put it up to his head and say, renounce Jesus or you're going to die. And they wouldn't do it, and he'd shoot him, and that'd be that person would die. Then he would go to the next one, do the same thing, and then the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And the Rod Dreher spoke about was that every one of them died
because they stuck to their convictions.
They stuck to it.
Yeah.
Imagine if we all did that in a way where we said, you know what, I'm going to stand for what I believe, and I'm only doing it at the coffee shop, man. I'm only doing it in my workplace.
Right. Where the consequences are different.
Exactly. And so we live in a place right now where that hopefully will never happen to us. I hope I'm strong enough to handle it. I don't know. I hope I never find out. But the point is that's the kind of faith that we're talking about. Your faith is not for you.
Right.
It's for the world.
Yeah.
And we are meant to be world changers. Okay, sorry.
Oh no, that's all good, man. I love that story too. It's a great illustration of what we're talking about. I think at the very least too, it's like, hey, you don't have it that bad, guys. When you struggle over what to do for your God, we really don't have it that bad.
That's exactly right.
And that should motivate you to take a chance.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been kind of studying the approach that we take, and the energy that we put to living out our purpose. All right, and of course, one of my favorite stories is David and Goliath. Everybody loves David and Goliath.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the problem with that story is a lot of people focus on the challenge. They focus on Goliath.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So everybody's like, yep, I got a hardship. And when they see themselves in the story, they can relate whatever it is they're struggling with.
Yeah.
Right. That's how they view it. They see their Goliath in their life.
Slaying giants.
And that's how they read the scripture.
Yep.
Okay. What they don't focus on is David's approach to the entire thing.
Yeah.
So I read it a little bit differently. I think this is pretty cool. So a little background for those who don't know. God had a perfect design for us, and the Israelites were living in it. But after a while, they started looking to the world for what their community should look like. And so
sounds familiar.
Yeah, right. They ask God for a king.
Mm-hmm.
And at first, is it Solomon?
The first king?
No, I'm sorry, Samuel. Hello, Samuel is their
Saul.
prophet.
Saul,
Well,
yeah.
no, Samuel's the prophet, and Samuel's like, guys, this is not a good idea. You probably shouldn't do this. God doesn't think it's a good idea either. And they insisted,
Yeah,
right?
right?
So here's the free will piece. And God's like, okay, fine. That's what you want. You're going to get what you asked for.
And this is important to remember,
Yes.
that God will allow these things to happen if we continue to ask for him. So anyway, go ahead.
Even though he said, don't do it.
That's
right. Oh, man, we don't listen. Anyway, so the first king is Saul, appointed by Samuel. And it starts out pretty good.
Yeah.
But then, of course, Saul's heart starts to get hardened. He turns from God. And now the Israelites, their life starts to be kind of bad.
Really bad.
Really bad. And so they're fighting the Philistines like the Israelites tend to do.
Yep.
And and in this process, they're on this battlefield, and of course, Goliath comes out every day and taunts them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so at some point, Samuel recognizes that Saul's not it, and God tells him, "You're going to anoint a new king." Samuel's so scared, he kind of sneaks off in the middle of the night to go do as God told him to do, and he ends up in the house of Jesse.
Oh yeah.
And Jesse parades all of his sons out there, and not one of them, he's not directed to anoint a single one of them, right?
Right.
And then he's like, yo, Jesse, Samuel saying this, are these all your boys? And Jesse's like, well, there's one really meek and mild one that's in the field. You want me to bring him in? And they're like, yeah, I do. And God speaks directly to Samuel and says, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. Mm-hmm. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Okay, so the message here, guys, is God does not have one view of what a warrior is.
That's right.
And so keep going, kind of fast forward. At some point, Saul he's tormented by Satan. Dude can't get any rest, and his servants are like, hey, this musical instrument tends to relax you.
Yep.
He's like, yep, I love the lyre. It's like a flute, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, yeah, find me a flutist. And their response to him is, we know a guy. He's the son of Jesse. And the adjectives they use to describe him, he is a brave man and a warrior.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about you, but the last time I was holding auditions for musicians, I wasn't like, who among you is a brave warrior?
Yep.
I cared more about how you played that instrument, right?
Yep.
And so think about, this is the character of this man that God has put into Saul's life to play this instrument. So my message here, just to bring up this background, is don't be surprised if God uses some really weird things to give you placement and access to do his job.
Boom.
Right?
Absolutely.
And that's how David arrives on the scene where these battle lines are being drawn and Goliath is taunting the men of Israel.
Yeah.
Okay? I know this is a long story, but bear with me.
I'm with you, man.
So David kind of bounces in and out of that camp playing the lyre, but at one point he's back at home, and his dad says, hey, go check on your brothers. We want to see what's going on with the war and check on your brothers because they're on the front lines. And he's like, okay, great. I'll deliver some food. And he gets there, and Goliath comes out while he's standing there. Mm-hmm. And obviously Goliath does his thing. He taunts the men of Israel. The Bible specifically says that the men of Israel were dismayed and terrified. Mm-hmm. So that's their approach, right? And what does David say? Yeah, dismayed and terrified. And David's response, he asked the men standing there, what's going to be done for everybody. And he basically says, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he would defy the armies of the living God?
Yeah.
He's a teenager. Mm-hmm. And this is the scariest dude anybody's ever seen, that one man is able to terrify and dismay an entire army. And his approach is, how dare this guy defy the living God?
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
That's his approach.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the way I approach my hardships, or a lot of men in our groups approach their hardships. Like, this is terrible, and I'm just going to be paralyzed and not do anything.
That's it.
This guy steps up, and he actually sprints to the battlefield as opposed to hanging back. And he's like, how dare this guy defy the armies of the living God? That's the type of boldness, the type of brashness, the chutzpah our God is asking us to have as we approach our walk with him.
Yes.
So I'll ask you this, and I'm putting you on the spot here, but how did David get that kind of courage?
So if you think about, that's a great question. If you think about, first of all, that he's talking about going after the uncircumcised, what do you call him?
Philistine.
Yeah. There's something more going on here.
Okay.
By the fact that David said uncircumcised is actually he was talking about the covenant, that the promise that God had with his people, which leads us later on into the New Testament, where Jesus comes and brings in a new covenant that we're in right now called a grant covenant. But back then there was a law that we had to follow, that people were supposed to be following, and the Israelites, part of the reason why they were fighting for what they had was they're being called to keep this law moving forward, so that in the future, we would have Jesus
Okay.
with the Grant Covenant and so forth. So he says, you're uncircumcised, this uncircumcised Philistine. Who does he think he is? So Goliath's heart was
God was not with him.
it was not with him,
Right.
which means that he was Christ wasn't known at that time, but he was anti-God, anti-Christ. He was against anything that had to do with that. And so this is a fight over worldview at some level.
Right.
So, and David says, I've got to step in and do something about this. So again, it's his fight that day against that giant.
Yep.
Is no different than it is for us today.
Right. And I think, what if David looked at that situation and said, if I get too aggressive with this guy, he'll never know God.
Right. Or, yeah, man, we got to be careful what we say here, but yes.
I don't want to, or how about, I don't want to turn off the armies of the Philistines, so I should probably just be quiet and be dismayed and terrified with the rest of the army.
Yeah, so we can stand on these hills, looking down into where the battle should be happening, and continue the standoff that's never going to go anywhere,
and never move forward.
Yeah, so we just stand here.
Yeah, that's going to be my answer to everything from now on.
Exactly. So just standing and doing nothing is just as bad as not doing. Well, I guess that's the same thing, but just not fighting for what you believe and what you know is right.
Exactly right. And so you think about too, like, so he walks in and he's a little bit more aggressive, he's a little bit more confident, and what does everybody say to him? All the guys on the battle lines are like, you can't do it.
Yeah, that's right.
He goes to the king and says, hey, I'm here. I got it. I'll take care of it. And Saul is like, nope, you're too little.
Yep.
You can't do it. And the reality is there is no shortage of naysayers that are going to tell you that you can't do it.
That's exactly right.
And David's response is pretty legendary. He basically, and I'll just read out of the scripture. This is verse 34 in 1 Samuel 17. But David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because, and here's the key, he has defied the armies of the living God.
That's it.
The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. So he's not telling Saul, hey, I'm this mighty warrior, strong enough to take down a bear. At the very end, he throws credit right back to God. Mm-hmm. He says, the Lord rescued him from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear, and he will rescue me from the hand of the Philistine.
That's it. And there was a level of training.
Yes.
For David. David was training early on. God puts us in these places, and this goes to this idea that, when we get into places and we have struggles and we have all of that, all it is it's a preparation for something more later on. And I have to remind myself of that a lot.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But it's true. I mean, you think you can't overcome a certain thing, but what we see here with David was that he brings up the fact that he's protected his lambs, which is, again, just amazing how the Bible works. But I protect my lambs from all these, animals that are attacking, predators. And now I'm going up against this guy, and I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, and he knew it.
Yeah, and he knew it.
Yeah.
He just trusted it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man, that's crazy.
Well, the crazy thing, too, is like, even after Saul accepted that David was going to be the Israelites' champion, he tried to put him in his own armor and give him his own shield and his own sword. And David's like, dude, this is ridiculous. I can't even move in this stuff because it's built for you.
That's so good. That's just amazing.
It's not built for me.
That's right.
And so David goes to the stream and selects, and the Bible even says he picked 5 stones from the river.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people point to this and go, why did he take 5? Did he not really have faith that one was going to be enough? And there's a lot of opinion about this. I've not found anything in the Bible that points to something specific for why he chose 5. If it's out there, please send us an email at gentotribe.
.com or at Gmail
at Gmail and let me know, because I would like to learn. Some people think that maybe Goliath had 4 brothers, and David was prepared to slay all 5 of them that day. There is some evidence that there were other giants later in Scripture, and maybe he was doing that. I think that maybe it's a metaphor for the tools that God gives us, right? They're all different. He doesn't give you one tool, but you should select the right tool for the right moment. Mm-hmm. And I believe that's true. Like, I think God equips us, because you mentioned training, with a lot of different techniques, but we are supposed to analyze the situation and use the right tool for the right job.
Yeah, that's right.
But here's the bottom line, guys, and here's the approach I want everybody to realize. This is really the big so what. When David approached the battle lines to throw the stone, the Bible specifically says that he ran there. Mm-hmm. And so while all these other men are literally wetting themselves in their armor, watching this go down, David steps up with just himself, a sling, and a satchel with 5 stones, and he sprints to the battlefield.
Yeah.
Because he knew that God was on his side.
Yep.
He selected the perfect tool for the perfect job. He spun the sling, and he threw the freaking stone. Mm-hmm. And he didn't, I mean, I would think he barely even aimed, because he knew that God was calling him to throw the freaking rock, and that God was in charge of making sure it hit the target.
That's it. And you know, talking about all of that, I was just sitting here thinking to myself, it's funny how we can get caught up in, the 5 stones, right?
Yes.
But I work with special operations people. I've done it for 15 years, and I can't think of one of them that goes, yeah, I think I'll just take one bullet with me today and see how it goes.
Exactly right.
Right.
Yeah.
So okay, who cares? The thing is he was preparing himself. He was getting ready to go. You know, it's the same thing we do with the ministry when we're planning events. We spitball and we try to figure out what it is that we need to do, and then at the end of the day, we have a plan, and then we get to the actual event, and the plan changes. Not completely, but it does change based off of, we just don't know what we're getting ready to do. So it could be just the fact that, well, Dave was getting ready for combat.
Yeah, exactly right.
You know, and so anyway, and what I love about it too is that once he committed himself, you know, you're talking about him running in, he committed himself to, and I can't believe that he just went in there saying, oh, this will be fine. What's the worst that could happen? No, there's probably fear. And
of course,
and he runs in there because, why is he running in there? He's coming in because he's going to war. Yeah. So he's closing the distance, and he's doing it quickly because he's a little guy. He's got speed, whereas Goliath is a big dude, probably doesn't have speed, and he's using what he's got. He's using his tools to overcome the challenge that's in front of him.
Right. Yeah, I love looking to his energy and the way that he approached it.
Yeah.
Right, because again, we're not called to be meek and mild. We're called to be confident and aggressive, and dangerous for the kingdom. You love that word. How can I be dangerous for the kingdom?
Yep.
That's how you do it.
That's it.
And he wasn't even there to fight a battle that day. No, he arrived to deliver his brother's lunch.
Still doing something, to take care of the war effort.
That's exactly right. And but when he arrived, he saw that there was a need that could be met that nobody was willing to meet, and he stepped up and he did it.
Yeah, that's so good.
And that's what we're not doing these days, guys.
No, we're not.
You know, again, going back to that consumer mentality, we want to be fed. The big problems are for others, and we don't look at the challenges of this world and figure out if there's a tool in my satchel that's perfect for it.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the end of the day, I love saying it. God's just telling you to throw the freaking rock. Mm-hmm. Like, what are you waiting for? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you probably hear the tension in my voice because I'm frustrated with myself all the times I had that opportunity. I didn't take it.
Yep.
And I'm frustrated with the men that we work with, that we live with and interact with, all the chances that they're not taking. And we are so ready to complain about our circumstance and be dismayed and terrified behind the cover of the battle lines No one's willing to just step out there and chuck something.
Yeah. Yep, that's right.
So let's start doing that. And the cool thing is, I read this somewhere, I don't remember where I got it, but, a lot of people look at Goliath and they see a challenge too big to overcome. David looked at Goliath and saw a target too big not to miss.
That's good, man.
I love that. I wish I knew who said it. I can't claim credit.
It's really good.
Guys, we live in a world that is a target-rich environment. And if God is the one that's directing the stones that you throw, you're going to hit what you need to hit.
That's right.
Yeah, we just got to be willing to step up and chuck the rock.
Love it.
So
yeah. So as you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking about Paul. In one of the things he wrote in Galatians, and this is in Galatians 1:10.
Talk about a guy that started out doing it wrong and then found his way. So go ahead.
That's right. So I think, am I getting this right? Anyway, it says, am I now seeking approval of man or of God? Or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ.
Yep.
So I mean, look, here's the thing. I think both of us have admitted during this talk that we're not necessarily doing this exactly right all the time either.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up again. Yes.
Because the reality, and I opened up earlier on and said, this was something I was struggling with during my prayer time the other day, and I wrote 3 different passages down about trying to keep men happy as opposed to God.
Yeah.
And so the end of the day, we one of the things we talk about all the time in our ministry is that you have an identity, and your identity is no different than mine. I'm a son of God. You have a purpose, which is no different than mine. Everybody keeps talking about, I got to find my next person, but I got to find my purpose.
Yeah.
As soon as I grow up, then I'll know what I'm supposed to do with my life.
I can tell you what that is. Yeah.
The purpose?
Yeah. We talk about it all the time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So
your mission changes though.
Yeah, but your missions change. And David, this story of David is actually it's another reminder that our missions do change. So to go back to what we hammer on all the time is I am a son of God, number one. Number two, my purpose is to bring the government of kingdom to everywhere I walk, period. That's it. And then that means that we all have different missions. And your missions, Jim, Marion, are much different than my missions, and some of them are the same and whatever. And
yes,
and we bring different strengths to different places, and we need each other, which is important too. But this idea of mission then is that everybody's been given different missions, and David actually showed a place in that very story where his missions changed, and he just rolled with it.
He sure did.
His purpose didn't change. He knew who he was. He was a son of God. He knew his purpose, which was to bring heaven's principles to everywhere he went. He showed up to the battle lines with a different mission.
Yes.
To give food and things to his brothers who were actually there to fight. And then in that process, his mission changed, and now but his purpose and his identity never changed.
Yes, exactly right.
And now he's going out to do something different.
And this should serve as some encouragement too, because if you keep reading David's story, he messes up a lot.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah.
Right? Kind of a ton. But God continuously says that David is a man after my own heart.
That's right.
So guys, you're going to mess up. I am too. I do it daily. And I count inaction as messing up too. Like,
yes,
I can't tell you how many chances I've not taken, probably more than I have. But when your purpose is rooted in the Creator, He's going to stick by your side, even though you mess up.
That's right.
So don't be discouraged. And the other point I'd like to make, you talked about David's fear. Like, that's the biggest thing I think that keeps me from throwing the rock for God daily, is fear. Nowhere does it say that God says just eliminate fear. What He does say is be courageous.
Yeah, that's right.
And step up in spite of the fear. So my message is, I know that throwing the rock is hard. Do it anyway.
Yep. I love it.
That's it.
Yep. Do it anyway.
So
that's good.
It's not going to be easy. So don't think that we're sitting here going, hey, if you decide to be bold like this, it's just going to be easy all the time.
That's right. And if
So,
there's the other thing I want you guys to remember, and I think it's important, is you have to remember that your faith, once you've said yes to Christ, it's not for you anymore.
yeah, true.
It is to a point. I'm trying to figure out a good way of explaining that, but the point is that once I say, I mean, it's obviously important for me to give my heart to Christ, but once you've done that, you have work to do.
Yes.
And what you have to do, if he's made a change in you, and I know he does, and he's still making changes in me, then that's something that you need to share with the world, and you got to throw that first stone.
Oh, yeah. And we can't do it alone.
No, that's right.
Yeah, that's the other piece. I need you
Yes,
because I'm not strong enough on my own strength to do it.
that's right.
So we need each other, and we've got to have each other's back.
Yep. And your faith is not just for you in your own little corner.
Exactly right.
It's to share it with the world, and it's to share and to have your friends and the people you trust to come along with you, do their part. And that's how it works.
Yep. Awesome.
Awesome, man.
You feel better?
I do feel better.
I'm feeling less annoyed all of a sudden. It's good to get it off your chest.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. And look, guys, I'm yelling at myself too.
Absolutely.
Don't think I'm pointing the finger
Nope.
outside this room. So let's stop being frustrated with ourselves and with each other and get to work.
That's it.
Sound
Love
good?
it, man.
Man, good talk today.
It was a good talk.
Got any final thoughts?
Gosh. No, I'm good, man.
Hey, out there, listeners, if you're feeling yelled at, good.
Yep.
That's a good thing. I'm feeling yelled at myself.
Yep, me too.
But let's roll up our sleeves and let's do the right thing.
Let's get to work.
For the kingdom.
That's it, man.
Love you, buddy.
Love you too.
Thanks for partnering with me.
Yeah, man, this is awesome.
More to come, fellas.
Yeah.
Have a great day. Say goodbye, Mike.
We'll see ya. See ya.